The Baroque art time period lasted from 1600 to 1700. It was named for its unusual and characteristic features demonstrated in its structures, the calling of St. Matthew, and such structures as the Palace of Versailles. Both of these artworks are marked by their insane and grand and different nature from the artworks that preceded them. In one, you have the illusion of light and just and such mannerisms that draw you in and make you believe that you're watching a play, you're watching something unfold. They're so dramatic and just they captivate you. In the other one, you have a grand and beautiful mansion that covers 3.5 square miles, and you have gardens and you have ponds that are so elaborate and magnificent and just different from the time. The Palace of Versailles is a perfect representation of the different styles and different features of the Baroque time period. And that is what I'll be talking about mostly. Not because I don't love the calling of St. Matthew, but rather because I've already covered it, and I don't think I could do it again if I wanted to. Anyways, landscape architecture becomes an important artistic expression in the Baroque time period. It first started at Versailles. The arrangement of the landscape regarding the bushes and the gardens and the trees was well coordinated. The closer you got to the Palace of Versailles, the more beautiful and more coordinated the garden actually was. It was meant for a viewer to look into it and see the beauty that was France at the time. The gardens were made to look like they had no end, like they were limitless. The windows inside the Palace of Versailles were meant to accentuate this feeling. They were looking down upon this garden and seeing just how beautiful it was, furthering their perspective of the king, who they also believed to have limitless amount of money and power. The 50 fountains located on campus of the palace were harmoniously arranged. They were connected via pathways and sidewalks which allowed the viewer to experience the optimal journey throughout the gardens. The fountains closer to the Palace of Versailles were turned on 24/7. They were always on. They were always maintained by servants who worked under the king. The ones that were farther away were not always turned on. They were turned on whenever a visitor, an important visitor, like King Louis, would walk by. These miles and miles of vistas or pathways that were spread throughout the gardens of the Palace of Versailles were an important characteristic of the Baroque time period because of their length and overall size. Another important characteristic of the Palace of Versailles is its 386 sculptures that litter both the inside and the outside of the palace. 221 of them are on the outside. All have that Baroque-like style. They're all very theatrical and very stage-like. They're set on a pedestal meant for everybody to see. One in particular that I want to talk about is called "The Evening" by Desjardins. And you can see by this picture that they're in motion. They're holding their bow up to the sky, almost as if they're celebrating or something. And it's reminiscent of Ecstasy of Saint Teresa and how the angel was caught in a pose where she's about to stab Saint Teresa. And both of them are so theatrical and stage-like. They're both set on a pedestal above for everybody to see. And it's all so theatrical, and you can see the drapery of both sculptures also should be noted. It really emphasizes the notion that they're in motion. One's drapery is to her side as if she's walking in a certain direction, and the surface tension of the air is blowing against her and forcing the drapery to her body, where another one is hanging down as if she's limp. One being in the evening and one being in Ecstasy of Saint Teresa. So it's very noticeable, the idea of movement. And all of these elements are very characteristic for the Baroque time period. The idea of movement and theatrics. It's seen in the Ecstasy of Saint Teresa. It's seen in the Calling of Matthew. It's seen in Las Meninas, as if you're viewing something. Um, and you're a visitor just watching as something unfolds. It's like a moment caught in time. Where the Palace of Versailles stands now was a hunting lodge. Um, King Louis XIV decided that he wanted a palace and a new capital, so he built the Palace of Versailles. This structure, which rises 3 stories and covers 3 football fields, has had 4 stages for its build. One from 1664 to 1668, another from 1669 to 1672, another from 1678 to 1684, and another from 1699 and 1710. Although there were 4 building campaigns in total, arguably the second and third were most important. The second one placed the king and queen's apartments on the second floor, or the main floor. It made them the biggest room on the floor, and it made them the central part of the entire future of the Palace of Versailles. This placed importance on them because as soon as you walk through the facade, or what will be the Hall of Mirrors, you would walk into their rooms. Um, and the third building campaign added 2 wings, the south wing and the north wing. These wings are both 528 feet long, and they included a variety of rooms for a variety of purposes. You have such places like galleries, chapels, courtyards, apartments for the high class, ballrooms, military-esque rooms, political rooms or cabinets, and even courts, bathroom, terraces, dining halls, salons, libraries, and certain rooms for storage. It was 528 feet and 3 stories high of all these different rooms that you needed to control your country, and all of it was surrounding um, King Louis. And when you notice that most of these rooms would have had a window that overlooked a seemingly endless expanse of gardens with exotic plants and fountains that were seemingly always on, and ponds that were man-made and put there just for the beauty, and all the different types of statues that were hand carved and picked out just for that location. It's a symbol of power and control. No matter where you ventured in the house, gold was everywhere. It littered the ceiling, the floors, the window seals, and the door frames, the banisters of certain staircases. It was made into medallions, statues, cups, and bowls, and everything it could be made into. It would have glowed in the sunlight and created a beautiful shine. Along with gold, embroidered linens were also very plentiful in amount. They could be found anywhere throughout the house. They could be found in window seals, and bedrooms, as tablecloths, and they were embroidered and colored to match the style of the room. The palace contains 3,000 paintings spanning 3 centuries. A large portion of the paintings were placed on the ceilings of certain hallways and rooms, very important rooms, like the Hall of Mirrors and King Louis's bedroom. Um, but most paintings were oil on canvas. The painting that I want to look at is called Saint Jean Evangelist by Charles Lebrun. This painting dives into the use of tenebrism. It uses shadow and light to cast almost a spotlight on Saint John. And again, you see an expressive sense of movement. He's exaggerating his posture. He almost like he's falling back. His hands are up in the air. One of his feet's off the ground. He's really dramatic and very expressive. And chiaroscuro is being used to amplify his presence. The light beam is placing him in the foreground, and all the negative space around him is contrasting to this very white and beautiful light shining down on him. And this piece is very similar to my favorite piece of artwork, which is called The Calling of St. Matthew. And I'm not going to share all the similarities because I feel like that would take up too much time, but you can see the lighting, and you can see the exaggerated movement and facial expressions and everything that really gives it that Baroque style. Okay, after this, I swear I'm done. One of the most famous elements of the Palace of Versailles was the Hall of Mirrors. It's located on the facade of the Palace of Versailles. It stretched 73 meters, and it had 357 mirrors and 17 arches. So it was quite extensive, quite long, and it had the biggest mirrors that could be made at the time. It reflected the light that came out of the window, and whenever Mr. Louis the 15th walked out of his bedroom, he would be greeted by light casting from every which direction. So that's exciting. Every element in the Palace of Versailles captured the Baroque ideals and features perfectly. Um, so much drama and there's so much complexity. Light was captured, light was created, and movement was caused. Exaggeration and dramatic features were added everywhere where they could be. It was so elaborate and decorated extensively, and it's what makes it so Baroque, and this is what makes it my second favorite piece. It's just so ornate and so beautiful, and everything was planned out so well. And I hope you can appreciate it as much as I do.